to say. He's former political editor of The Sun, George Pascoe-Watson. Good afternoon to you, George.
Julia.
George. Sorry, I assumed you just dozed off after starting speaking because you were watching a bit of Rachel Reeves' speech on the sidebar on the TV.
Oh, she is actually already, she's delivered perhaps the most powerful point of her speech, which was to stand up to some hecklers who were taking her on the Palestinian issue. And I think commentary is already saying that might be the strongest bit of her speech.
Wow. Well, we know that the Home Secretary, what is she this week? Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, she has already said that the Palestinian state is an inalienable right of the Palestinian people. I mean, I'm just surprised they aren't just all waving Palestinian flags all week. But there we are. You say heckled by Palestinian protesters. She said, "We understand your cause." Someone was shouting, Israel is committing genocide. They're not. Chancellor said, we understand your cause and we understand your cause and we're recognising a Palestinian state. I can't keep up, it hurts. But we are now a party of government, not a party of protest. And then, she just carried on. But anyway, let's talk about what she and the Prime Minister are saying. Because in particular, I want to read to you a statement that Starmer put out on Twitter this weekend saying, it's national division or it's national renewal. That's the fight we face. What on earth do you think he meant by that?
Now, here's an interesting thing about Keir Starmer. Lots of the language that he's used in the last year since becoming Prime Minister has actually been quite convoluted. It's not been very specific. It ranges around. It's very hard to nail him down. And in fact, I think the Sunday Times did a big piece on this yesterday about analysing the language that he uses. It's a problem for him. It's a problem for the Labour Party. It's a problem for the government because communications is so critical that if you can't nail somebody down and be very, very clear about what your vision is, then it's hard to pull people with you. Now, of course, he might argue that being broad and general allows him to keep as many people in a loose coalition together as possible, which, of course, is the other trick in modern politics today. But what it means is we end up, as you say yourself, what does he mean? And that's a big problem for him and the people around him.
Yeah, I mean, no one knows what he stands for. No one knows what he's saying, even when he's just said it. He doesn't answer questions. I mean, he's an absolute disaster. We see this. He's the most unpopular Prime Minister since records began, basically. I mean, that's quite a feat after just 14 and a bit months. We've also got, Andy Burnham wandering around conferences, the king over the water. Mentioned just come down from Manchester to Liverpool. I mean, it's extraordinary that he's wandering around being thought of as the next leader and that's even being discussed. I mean, you and I remember, we were both working in the House of Commons together as lobby correspondents when Tony Blair had just got into power. The idea that in 1998, a few months into, to the summer of that, there would have been a conversation about Tony Blair facing a challenge to his leadership is laughable. So why is it happening to Keir Starmer?
For reasons, one of which is if you come into politics just trying to hold on to little majorities here and there, then, of course, in the end, you'll be blown off course by events. And the other thing I think is, we live in a different era than the one when you and I were working together. The era of social media and constant commentary makes it much, much harder to lead because you're always trying to square off different groups of people who might be offended or upset. And the reality is, if you look at somebody who's a very strong leader and takes direction, it's because they don't really care about what's going to happen to them in the polls. And that's the dilemma we have in all Western representative democracy now. Yeah,
and it is niche. But then you think about someone like Margaret Thatcher, who just I don't care if this or that policy is unpopular. I'm going to say it because it's true, or I'm going to do it because it's true. And Keir Starmer seems to be constantly worrying about that, apart from when he's talking about reform, when he constantly talks about racism. I mean, he had to sort of correct himself. I'm not saying, he doesn't say that Nigel Farage is racist. You'd think he'd be sued to his backside. He might lose his donkey field to that. But he doesn't say that reform voters are racist. Although, if you carry your flag and you protest against things, you might be a bigot or racist. But he says that reform's policy, their migrant policy in particular, in relation to those who come here legally but aren't net contributors and aren't really integrating in society, and that they should have to reapply, and that they shouldn't get indefinite leave to remain, even if they've already been given it, and should be deported. He says that's a racist policy, and immoral even. But today, Shabana Mahmood, his own Home Secretary, is announcing a policy which, other than the backdating, seems to me to be pretty much the same policy. What do you make of that?
Of course, this is all about trying to speak to different audiences, and that's how you end up with confusion. And of course, not only that, Rachel Reeves has already sort of stood behind Keir Starmer's comments using the racist language herself. She said this morning that she feels the same way.
Yeah.
And of course, there are a lot of people in the Labour Party, and don't forget they're at the Labour conference right now, so all their delegates are around them. That's what they feel too, and they applaud that kind of language, and they absolutely agree with it. So do the trade unions, and so do the Labour members.
But that's fine getting applause from that lot, but that lot are going to vote for you anyway. And on the current polling, an awful lot of people who've gone over to Reform, he's not going to win them back by basically saying, you support a racist policy. Because if you support a racist policy, you know what that makes you? Wink, wink, a racist.
Well, here's the thing, Julia. It's not exactly as you put it, because the reality is the people in the hall, the people in the constituency parties, the trade unions may not vote for Keir Starmer in a leadership election, should it come up, or any of the other people. And that's what they're actually worried about right now, is staying in power as this crisis begins to engulf them. And that's why they're making these comments. In a sense, they're not really trying to worry about outside the Liverpool conference. They're much more worried about their own survival, as you say. They have Andy Burnham, they have others circling around because they feel that the Prime Minister may be wounded. So the Prime Minister has to look at his own audience, his immediate audience right now. Because when all this is happening, you think to yourself, who is running the country and what are they focusing on?
Yeah, and I think we can safely say they don't have a clue. In that sense, we saw on Friday this sort of desperate sort of, oh, we can't, we can't deal with illegal migration. Bearing in mind we had even just one single boat on the weekend that had a record 125 migrants in this mega dinghy. That is going to be a big worry. 1,000 arriving over the weekend. And we talked about legal migration and how we deal with, people who stay who aren't contributing. But in illegal migration, he just plucked out of thin air the idea that we should have digital ID. We should all have apps on our phone. And that somehow would stop the pull of illegal work for illegal migrants. I mean, asked repeatedly by Laura Kuenssberg yesterday, he couldn't explain why that would actually make a difference. But do you detect Tony Blair's hands in this? Because this was something that he, when he was Prime Minister, constantly talked about.
It was, and it's been an idea that's been around for a long time, kicked around and rejected. That's for very good reasons. What I do think, though, is that, you've got to be fair to the Prime Minister. If you're asking him to take decisions and be bold, then at least let him have his decision and let's argue it out. Let's debate it out. Because I'd rather have somebody try to do something concrete than somebody just sort of pussyfooting around the corners.
But he's not being bold by sort of saying we'll deal with illegal migration by making all legal British citizens be able to be tracked by their government in real time. I'm not sure what I genuinely can't even work out why even he thinks that would work.
Well, you're absolutely right. The details of the policy don't seem to stack up in any logical way, and lots of people would agree with that. I think what I'm trying to say, though, is at least he is trying something radical or talking about something radical. I'd rather have the debate than pretend there's no problem. There is definitely a problem. And, you look at the other announcements that Rachel Reeves and others are making this week, it sounds good on paper to deny people benefits if they have been out of work for 18 months, to make sure that they actually have to be contributing and all the rest of it. That sounds great. But for that to happen, if they're going to take paid work, you need businesses to step up and offer that paid work. And of course, businesses are right now being squeezed by the extra taxes and costs of doing business. And they're not in a fit state to come forward and offer this kind of opportunity.
And they don't want to take on, we had a caller earlier, they don't want to take on some sort of feckless youth who's got no work ethic and doesn't want to be there and isn't going to try. And they're worried that these new employment rights that Angela Rayner was busy with before she got, had to resign, that actually they wouldn't be able to get rid of this person. They'd be stuck with them.
And that is exactly the one of the problems that the government is going to face. So a whole bunch of policy ideas being floated this week. All of them sound brilliant if they came to fruition, apart from your ID cards one. But the question is, does this government have the authority and the ability to turn those policies into activity and action on the ground? And it's very, very debatable whether they do.
And it is extraordinary that they have got a majority of, a working majority was 161 and is only, not even 15 months into being in power, and has completely lost all authority. It's quite extraordinary. How damaging do you think all the, the free gear care stuff, that the free glasses from Lord Ali and the free suits and his wife's frocks and the football tickets and all of that, and the damaging stuff about Angela Rayner and her hypocrisy over the stamp duty that she was due to pay and didn't pay, and then we've got Keir Starmer and this allegations about this donkey field, sheltering £320,000 in a field basically he bought for 20k about 20 years ago, because we all have a spare 20k to buy a donkey field for his disabled, very elderly mother. Loving gift from his son who was earning good money, and then it all appears to be wrapped up in a trust, or was it? Dodging questions from the Sunday Times for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, and then having to tackle it on the BBC in an interview yesterday. How damaging do you think any of that is, given that no one's accusing him of breaking the law, but they are saying he's out of touch and he's a hypocrite because he would definitely criticise someone else for doing what he himself has done?
I know you'd like me to say, I think it's damaging in the moment. I think long term, people have very short memories, and there's so many things going on in the world that people won't remember the detail. But what is a problem is if you are trying to run a government in this super complex, fast moving world where there are huge risks and huge challenges, then it's a huge distraction to you as an individual and to the team around you, because you're trying to firefight the whole time. And it's very, very hard to do that and keep an eye on the big prize and the big picture. And that's the thing that your viewers and listeners care about, is who is actually running this country with the debt that we've got and the challenges that we face around the world at this time. And I'd much rather they were not having to deal with that kind of stuff. But short term, sure, it's a problem. Long term, I think people forget.
Yeah. Although lots of it's quite complicated, but we know that the free gear care, that definitely stuck with a lot of people. And something about a donkey. I mean, no one, why is he buying a donkey field? A lot of people might say. Just finally, I must ask you. Now, you were a political editor. You counted them in, you counted them out. You dealt with a lot of better prime ministers than certainly Keir Starmer is turning out to be. I know you also now advise big clients on terms of a lot of their. Not just lobbying, but their PR and things as well. If you were going to give a bit of free advice to this government, to Keir Starmer in particular, what would you tell him to do?
Most important thing is to take a very, very clear opinion about what it is you want to achieve as the Prime Minister. Put in place the policies and the mechanics to make sure that happens, and go out and communicate about that, and not be sidetracked by all the rest of the stuff. Big idea, big picture, give some vision and go after it.
Yeah, he'd need to have the big idea. He'd need to have the competence to be able to make it happen then. But I don't think he has either of those, though. That's the problem.
One of the challenges, if you get into power by sort of constantly juggling plates, balls and spinning plates, is you don't really have a very strong team around you. You mentioned Tony Blair earlier on, and Tony Blair had a phenomenal team around him. Now, Keir Starmer is latterly, in the last few weeks, beginning to take steps to put good people around him. That's what the changes mean. And hopefully for him and for the country, those people will begin to sort things out. But it's a challenge, there's no question about it. And you need a Prime Minister who really believes in a big idea, and that's the question.
I think that's the key, isn't it? George Pascoe-Watson, great to talk to you, former political editor of The Sun. Thank you very much indeed. That's a bit of free advice for you there, Mr Prime Minister. You'd pay a lot of money for that, by the way. Seems really obvious, though, doesn't it, Sam Armstrong? But this is the fundamental thing. Keir Starmer doesn't have a big idea. I get the very strong impression he doesn't really believe in anything or know what he wants to do. He just wanted to have a CV, but he wanted to be Prime Minister. He wanted to be, he wanted to be barrister, director of public prosecutions, and then he wanted to be Prime Minister. And lots of people told him he'd be a great Labour leader and a great Prime Minister. He believed the publicity. It turns out he's really not very good at it. But I don't mind having someone who doesn't have a vision, as long as they're just really good at competence in managing what they do, but he doesn't appear to be good at either.
Well, the trouble about running an organisation, any big organisation, without a mission, without a purpose, and this government is an organisation without a mission or a purpose, is they begin to tear each other apart. Because, you know, you look at, for example, the Church of England or something, an organisation that's lost its way, lost its mission, doesn't know what it's about anymore. They spend their entire time attacking one another, having big rows, because that's what happens if you're sort of drifting in the
you're not
wind.
all on the same page. This is what we're going to do. We're going to get the country back to work, sort out the economy.
The original sin of the Starmer project was they never knew why they were doing it.
They just weren't Jeremy Corbyn.
They weren't Jeremy Corbyn, and they wanted to win. They were in favour of them winning and the other guys losing.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to be said for winning, but again, what's the point of winning? Where are you on the donkey field?
Do you know,
how big a story is it or not?
I couldn't give a monkey's.
Couldn't give a donkey.
Couldn't give a donkey. My problem with Keir Starmer is that he is tinkering around while the Titanic of this country is perilously sinking because of migration, because of low growth, because of danger on the world scene, and he is doing absolutely nothing. Look, with this donkey fields, he spent a load of money buying his mother a field for a donkey 20 years ago. Good for him. He got the field back when she died. Fine, good for him. To be honest, I can't work out why he would have had to pay tax on that anyway. It was a field, he bought it, all the rest of it. The problem
it's very complicated.
The problem with this man is he's seriously unfit to be Prime Minister, and I want to keep focused on that. I want to keep focused on getting him out of office, because, as I say, the real story today is that it looks increasingly likely that he's going to break his promise to the public on the economy.
And I completely accept that. And Rachel Reeves is saying, you know, various things about, like, she wants to put laws in place to put economic security first. I mean, how do you do? I mean, who knows?
Don't you, Julia? Don't you? I want to put laws in place to secure economic stability.
Wouldn't that be great? No, but going back to the donkey field, genuinely.
Yes.
There's a whole thing. So he bought it for 20 grand back in 1996, and he says he gave it to his parents, and it was his mother, who was disabled and elderly, so she was very ill, and she wanted to be able to see donkeys in the field. That's lovely. 3 years ago, he sold the field and a small plot of adjacent land that belonged to his father for 320 grand. And basically then he paid 52 grand in capital gains tax on it. But there's a whole thing where he told the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards he bought that land originally for his parents, and he immediately gifted the land into them, but he didn't transfer the legal title. Now that means that the Sunday Times said that means he must have set up a trust to own the land. He has denied that he set up a trust to own the land, but for weeks and weeks and weeks he has failed to answer the questions which were asked by the Sunday Times perfectly legitimately about this. There was nothing to see. He could have explained what it was, couldn't he? Could he not? But he didn't, and now he's gone on telly. But do you think anyone cares? Or does this tie into the whole, you know, do as I say, not as I actually do? And you've got people like, you know, Angela Rayner, same thing. Angela Rayner was Deputy Prime Minister, and there she was, not paying the full stamp duty on a property, putting money in trust for her son after horrific NHS negligence, and that's her personal business. But, you know, that all emerged. But nevertheless, whether deliberate or not, avoiding paying the full tax on what was due.
The reality is the public have basically made up their mind on Starmer.
Yeah, they have, haven't they? So it doesn't make any difference. It
doesn't make much difference. They think he's a bit preachy, a bit weak. He's all right. He's broadly competent, but he doesn't believe in anything. He's just kind of there. He's cotton wool in the wind.
He's just sort of blancmange in Brill cream, isn't he?
Yeah, and this story is not going to change people's minds. The one thing Starmer could do to change their minds is do something about the boats, do something about the state of British high streets, do any of these things. He won't do it because he's in hock to a mad bunch of Labour-backed pensioners.
This stuff is perfectly doable, but what you need a government, and and again, a lot of us got our hopes in reform on this. I know you're a Tory, but whatever happens after the next election, literally, you've got to have a very clear plan. You've got to have laid it out. So you have that. This is what we're going to do. Some taxes are going to go up. Some taxes are going to go down. Whatever. But you need to make it really, really clear. So you've got that mandate, and so that's the deal, guys. It's going to be a very tough job, but it's not beyond us. And this country is a brilliant country, and it's not brilliant at the moment, and it can be great again. But we're going to have to do the work. But it's going to mean everyone on board, including all those feckless 18, 19, 20-year-olds who don't work. Anyway, 12:26 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts on all the stories we're talking about. Get in touch.